everything that you do is your job interview. Welcome back, episode 43, Cutoffs and Coffee. James and CT, your hosts. This quote to start off the intro was from today's podcast guest, head coach of Akron football's strength and conditioning. We had on Ben Iannachione, and I have to make sure to say it right to show respect to him. This guy is unbelievable. He's had quite the journey to get to the place where he is at now. He not only is one of the most interesting individuals that we've had on, he is the most tattooed. So we spend the first 30 minutes or so just diving into these tattoos that he has, why he has, what they mean to him, and why he has all these tattoos. He also says one of his big focuses in training is to better the human mind, psyche, and soul. And this is so interesting because we talked to the head strength coach of Akron football, and we never once mentioned sets and reps. And I think that's so important to kind of set you up to understand what you're getting into, what conversation you're getting into. And this is the next level of training. Again, this is past 3x10s. This is past 3x5s. This is what it takes for an individual who is introduced to the weight room to become and to use the weight room to help them become the best possible individual that they can be. So hold on, sit tight, because this conversation is a wild ride, and I think you're going to love every minute of it.
And this episode is brought to you by Cutoffs and Coffee Gear. As you know, we have some of the best t-shirts to cut the sleeves off for when you're doing yard work, right? The heat wave is here, right? So the opportunity to get jacked and tan is now or never. So get your Cutoffs and Coffee hat to protect the noggin, right? So we don't get sunburn. All right. I know I have to put a little extra SPF on the dome here. All right. And then get your Cutoffs and Coffee shirt. Learn how to make a cutoff. There is a skill involved, right? But this is the best shirt to cut the sleeves off. It's the best hat to wear while you're working out outside doing yard work or whatever that might be, right? Represent the brand. You know what it stands for. All right. So get your gear. Hit CT up for that. I don't have any of it.
None of that stuff. Hit me up for that. None of that stuff is written. Dude, James cracks me up every time he talks about the Cutoffs and Coffee Gear. So please support what we're doing on the podcast with that. Hey, if you like what we're doing, again, follow us on YouTube, smash the like button. Don't just tap it, smash that thing with some intent, right? Follow us, subscribe to us, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave comments. Tell us who you want on. We're going to try our best to get on the podcast with them to have great conversations. So again, we've introed the podcast guests, and we are really excited for you guys to dive into this and get into this. So again, without further ado, episode 43 with Coach Ben Iannachione. Enjoy. Coach, welcome to Cutoffs and Coffee, man. We're excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I am unbelievable. How are you guys? Thank you for having me. First off, it's an honor to be on here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're excited for this one. Man.
We'll let James to tell the story about how we got connected a little bit, but as soon as we did, man, we both knew we had to, try to move some people around, move some conversations around to get you on right away. We had some good conversation going, which will continue now that we are recording, but just, man, seeing your energy online, seeing what, you're able to bring to the athletes is really inspiring for strength coaches like James and I. So we're excited to get into, into the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty and dive into the conversation about training. But first of all, man, before we do it, let's open up with a couple of these questions and learn a little bit more about you.
Okay.
First of all, Coach, if we Google your name, we can find a bit about you. I'm sure through social media, we can find a bit about you. What is something that we need to know as hosts, and also our listeners need to know about you, that we can't find from a quick Google search?
Okay. For me, I'm definitely a strength coach. That's my profession. But at the core, I'm a husband and a father. And you might be able to find that on Google. Maybe you can find my kids' names, my wife's name. I don't know. But they're really my everything. And I want to say this because my oldest son, my wife loves podcasts, and she'll take me to school and have podcasts on. And so my son knows podcasts now. My oldest son, he's 6 years old, Sal. He said, "Dad, you're really going to be on a podcast?" I said, "Yeah, buddy, I am." So he's so excited to hear my voice and to see me on a podcast. So that excites me more than anything. My kids are my world. My wife is my world. And they're the reason that I am the way I am. So again, you might be able to find that on Google, but I'm really a simple guy. My family comes first before everything, before training, before coaching, all that stuff. I'm a husband and a father first.
That's great. And I think it grounds you to, understand why you do what you do. And that's why I love when people share things about that love for their family and whatnot, because everything else means a little more when we actually get into talking about training, because we know how you feel about that. So shout out to the kids and your wife, and shout out to Sal. Can we find anywhere a description of your tattoos on Google? Because if not, if you want to take us through real quick and kind of take us down the rabbit hole of your tattoos, I'd love to hear some of that.
That could be a long discussion in itself. Okay,
right.
So some of this will even tie into coaching, training, all kinds of things. I don't want to say this. I am the type of strength coach. I believe in good, sound training. I don't want to be taken wrong when I say that. I do believe that you have to have a scientific reasoning, and there has to be a rational approach to everything that you ask the kids to do. I really, really believe that. But my passion, my true passion in coaching is the human mind and the human psyche, and the human soul, if you will. And I know soul kind of starts getting a religious connotation to it. And I'm fine with that. I don't know what religion I am, but I'm okay if it goes down a religious road as well. So a lot of my tattoos are even based off of one of my favorite human beings, and I never got to meet him, Carl Jung. He's a clinical psychologist, and he kind of coined the term archetype, where an archetype, Jesus would be an archetype. He's the archetype of the ideal man. In ancient Egyptian mythology, their son was Horus, and he was symbolized by the falcon. So a lot of my tattoos are archetypical in meaning. So what I mean by that is, on the left side of my body, I have I'm a horror movie buff too. One of my favorite movies, I like black and white old school horror movies. So I have some of my favorite horror movies tattooed on the left side of my body. Michael Myers being my favorite. And some people might see that and think, oh, you're just trying to look tough with horror movie tattoos. What it is for me, and where I think sometimes people go wrong, is I watch those movies, and this might sound a little messed up, and this is some way to start the podcast.
No, give it to us.
Yeah. And I think to myself, if you're not careful, you could be that monster. I think way too often people see bad things happen in society, and they think, oh my goodness, how could that ever happen? Well, they're human and you're human, so you're perfectly capable of doing terrible things. So I try to stay on top of that all the time. So really those tattoos down the left side of my arm, every time I see Frankenstein or Michael Myers, it's pay attention to what you're doing. In my profession, and I don't ever want to talk bad about anybody, I have seen coaches, strength coaches, be really ugly to kids, just to be ugly to kids, to be that big, tough strength coach. When all I see is a man that is out of control of his emotions and insecure in who he is. So he kind of takes it out on the kids. To me, that is the manifestation of what Carl Jung would call the shadow. And that's kind of the archetype of evil. The most well-known version of that would be Satan. And if you're a Christian, you think Satan is real, and I'm not going to argue that. But to me, he's real enough. And that's called an archetype. And Carl Jung calls that the shadow. And he says that is a part of everybody's human psyche. And then we just tell different stories of it, and we give it different names. The Egyptians called it Set. You watch the movie Halloween, and it's Michael Myers. But to me, the trick is, if I'm not careful, that could be me. So that's kind of what my left arm is for. Pay attention to what I'm up to. And don't let that bad that's in all of us kind of grip me. Have it under my voluntary control, and then be willing to use it for good. And again, that would be another discussion to have. instead of ignoring it, he calls people to integrate it. And you have to be willing to kind of show your teeth a little bit, but do it in the service of good, not let it grip you. So that's the left side of my body. The right side, my right arm, and it's kind of neat how it plays itself out. And again, this might sound weird. I'm probably a little bit different than most strength coaches. I started having dreams and kind of visions of the stairway to heaven. And again, I was never a super deeply religious person. My mom was. I was raised right by a Catholic church, but I kind of never went that route. But I started having these visions of a stairway to heaven with the four horsemen. So I got that tattooed on my arm. Didn't fully know what it meant. But then I started reading Joseph Campbell. He has a book, Hero with 10,000 Faces. Carl Jung has a book, Figures of Transformation. Jordan Peterson has a book, Maps of Meaning. And they all kind of tell the story of the hero's journey. And essentially the hero's journey is you have to go through hell in order to get to heaven. To use religious words, archetypical words, I guess. So like the visions I was having were kind of visions of the hero's journey. I just got it tattooed on my body and then started learning about it later. And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of what I was up to. And then on my chest, I have one of my favorite quotes by Alexander Solzhenitsyn is, and look, I'm going to butcher it now because it's not right in front of me. The line of good and evil divides the heart of every man, and who wants to destroy a piece of his own heart? So on my chest is Saint Michael fighting the devil, and then there's ventricles coming off of both of them, and they share the same heart. So that's a constant reminder to me too. Same thing, pay attention to what you're up to. You can be really bad, but at the same time, if you can be bad, you can be really good. So then on the right side of my neck, kind of ties into the good side. It's a falcon, and that's the symbol of Horus. Horus was the son of Isis and Osiris, and he has his whole story. So that's a good reminder for me. And then the left side is the serpent. Again, good and evil, the polarity of man, if you will. And then on my throat is the Ouroboros, which is one of the most ancient symbols of God. It was found across a lot of different civilizations that had no connection to each other. It's a snake eating its own tail. That classic story of death and rebirth. Again, and that's told in Christianity through the crucifixion of Jesus, and he rises from the dead. But I really believe that's kind of what every man is called to do. I hope I'm not the same person I was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, and I hope a month from now I'm not the same person as I am sitting and talking to you guys. So again, it doesn't have to actually be like I died and came back to life. It's the old you dies, so the new you can be a better version. And that's often painful. So behind the Ouroboros, I have a phoenix. And that's the same idea. The phoenix rises from the ashes, but the phoenix is on fire because it's painful to let the old part of you burn off. But for me, again, I have that on my throat. So every morning I brush my teeth. I tell myself, do uncomfortable things, do hard things so the old you can die, so that maybe, hopefully, a week from now, a month from now, you're a better version of yourself. So again, I think a lot of people, maybe I'm putting my ideas in their head, but people see me and they see throat tattoos and all kinds of other stuff. It's really so when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I'm looking right at myself and saying, stay on top of your shit, because you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, and you owe it to the 100 kids that you're going to go coach today to know exactly what it is that you're up to. And don't bring any of your baggage in and throw it on them, because I think a lot of coaches do that at times. And then I have some other tattoos I just like. I'm a comic book nerd, so on the right side of my body, I have Hulk fighting the Wolverine. I have a comic book collection, so I'm definitely a dork. And on the left side, I have the front cover of Born to Run, because I am obsessed with Bruce Springsteen. I think I've seen him live maybe 12 times now. Me and my wife were just talking yesterday. He's doing like a European tour next year. We're like, let's go to Italy and see him. There's no chance that'll happen because I don't get many breaks, but right. One can dream, right?
There are so many things that I want to touch on, and I have made so many mental notes. I don't think I'd be able to. First of all, you said you're not like many strength coaches. That's why you're here, right? Because we all know what regular strength coaches say and what they look like and how they act. So you're on here, and we ask guests to come on here who are not regular strength coaches for that reason. So we appreciate you again king on. You mentioned all those authors, excuse me. And I think about, yin and yang, right? Like peace and war. And it's the individuals who don't have control over those two sides. Cause we can all do that. We all are capable of war. We're all capable of peace. It's the people who aren't in control of that who are the scary ones.
Yes.
Right. And so it's so interesting that people may look at you, whether they do or don't, right? Whether they look at you and say like, oh, he's scary. He's got these tattoos. It's on his neck. It's on his arm. But you are actually intentional about being better and being in control of those sides, when the individuals who are judging you for that are probably the ones who have no control of being able to control those multiple sides. So that's fascinating. And it sounds like you have so many good things to pass on to your kids. Not only the ones with your same last name, but also the athletes at Akron and all the other schools that you've been at. And so that's so awesome. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Saying that because we did start with, I love my kids. I love my family to death. So I did bring them up first. But in you saying that, I do want to make the point that my love for my children, my three kids, Sal, Sonny, and Louie, I'm going to tear up just thinking about them. I understand that the young men that I coach, and I've coached young women too. So early in my career, the young men and the young women that I've coached, there's somebody out there that loves them just as much. And the core belief of anything that I do, I'm not going to ask anything of the young kids that I coach that I wouldn't ask my own children. So you kind of equating my kids to the kids I coach, I very much do that every single time I walk into work. I can't sit here and say that I love them the same way I love my own kids, but I would never ask anything of them that I wouldn't ask my own kids. And I do understand that there is somebody that loves them just as much as my own kids. So I am going to love them. And love, sometimes love gets this sappy, soft, whatever you want to call it, connotation behind it. But I think love is actually one of the hardest things there is to do. Because like you just mentioned, in order to really love somebody and to call forth the best in them at all times, you have to love yourself first. And that's a really hard thing to do because you're not always fully aware of what you're up to and who you are. So I think a lot of coaches kind of point the finger out and not enough point the finger within in order to call forth the best of somebody else. So you're very much right in equating the young men and women that I've had the chance to coach with my own kids. I do take it that serious. I very much do.
Yeah, and I think
it's all about perspective.
You bring up a great point in the fact that we have coaches that can clock in and collect a paycheck, and it's a job. It's something on the resume. But then we also have coaches that take it personal, the responsibility that we have to be a voice for those youth, for those athletes, that we are responsible for the time we spend with them and how we use that time to maximize not just the strength qualities that we want to elicit from an athletic component, but what are they going to be like 20 years from now? Are they going to be able to remember the responsibility that we ask them to bring, because we're being responsible for our time with them and how we can grow and help and mold and improve the lives of athletes through the vehicle of strength and conditioning and improving performance. But, especially with the way society is now, are we helping mold more durable humans for the long run of the society that it looks like where we're headed is not necessarily a place that I feel comfortable our society going into. So how many individuals can we level up and help level up, help themselves level themselves up to create a better place for our future as people, not just athletes. And just, in the first 5-10 minutes of hearing you talk, it makes me feel really happy that I know a couple athletes that get to be coached by you. And we don't always have that such a positive outcome when we have
Yeah.
athletes go to college and come back to us. So,
Yeah.
knowing
Yes.
that we have a couple kids that get to see you on a daily basis makes me happy.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. And that's really kind of all I care about. I've been doing this a super long time. I worked for Coach Moffitt, who did it 40 years until his little early retirement. So I'm not sitting here saying that I have all the answers, not even close. What I have found myself obsessing over recently is what you just talked about. How do I build more resilient, better young men ready to kind of take on the world that they're going to have to take on? And I have found myself reading less and less strength and conditioning. Not that I have all the answers, that there isn't a ton more that I can learn in strength and conditioning. But I just find myself recently over the last year or so obsessing over psychology and building better young men, and not getting so caught up on the little nuances of training. And again, that's not me saying that what we ask them to do isn't vitally important. I'm not going to say we're doing 10 sets of 10 back squats with a minute rest. I'm not going to be crazy with what I ask them to do. I just haven't recently obsessed as much over the nuances of training as I have over, did my message get across the right way? Am I living my life the right way so that they look to me on how a man should act? Am I embodying that properly for them? And then what should that be? How should a man act? How should we take on the world? Where do we learn that from? So those are the things I've been obsessing over recently. And I find myself, anytime I pick up a strength and conditioning book, and again, not that I have all the answers, but I find myself saying, I've read this before, I've heard this before. Nobody's kind of reinventing the wheel. But a lot of strength coaches like to act like they are. And I guess that'd be a whole other discussion with where I feel our profession is going. I feel like we're kind of losing sight of why we should be coaching. And we're kind of getting caught up in, look how smart I am, look how great my program is, look what I've done for this athlete. And I think, people say it's ego driven. I don't think it's ego driven. I think it's persona driven. It all seems very disingenuous to me. So if I do nothing else, I want to be the most genuine coach any kid's ever had. And that's one of my core beliefs. So.
Yeah, and definitely continuing education from an actual exercise science perspective is just part of the job. That is a base requirement of the job. We know we're going to do it because we care about what product we're putting out there from a service standpoint, from a training standpoint. But the next level coaches are the coaches that are expanding beyond their comfort zone, which is way more comfortable for me to tune into a podcast and listen about, strength and conditioning for an hour and a half versus diving into a topic like I just listened to a podcast on mathematics and I had no idea what was going on, and it just reminded me how much I don't know. I think that's why we can stay relevant and current with our athletes, because we're continually putting ourselves in a position that we're not the expert in, as opposed to just leaning on what we're already good at. And that actually kind of tees up the next question that CT usually asks. If you want to go for it, CT.
Yeah, man. I was going to get into that, and then I thought, we can just get back to that later because we were talking so much about this. But let's get back to that. Skills, coach. So we talk about developing our skills as a coach and always consistently learning and trying new things. Do you remember the last skill that you tried to teach yourself, or something that you're currently working on right now?
Outside of strength and conditioning?
Outside the field.
I want to be an artist. I've been starting to learn, and I always have kind of done it. I've been, my oldest son, my 6-year-old Sal, he is an artistic person. He likes to color and draw and paint. I want to start really learning how to draw again. It's relaxing to me. We were doing it for a little bit where he would kind of build Legos and paint, and I would sketch and draw. So I want to really learn how to draw, and to get, like I talked about earlier, my mind, I'm not a type A person. Most strength coaches, they sit down and they organize everything on Excel, and I do that, but it kind of drives me crazy. Like my mind isn't organized like that. I kind of see things visually. So I want to get better at taking the things I see and being able to put them on paper. So that would be a skill that I'm definitely gonna keep working on to try to get better at, is my artistic ability. That's definitely a good release for me that I need to get better at, and I'm enjoying trying to get better at.
And I love that question, because a lot of our coaches will respond with something not super physical, right? We're exerting strength and showing athleticism and physical strength and prowess all the time during the day. So we need those certain things that get us away from that. And it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And that's why I love that question, because that was a great answer to it. It's like, I'm doing this stuff. I'm sick of reading these same books over and over again. I want to be an artist. And people are like, wait, wants to what? Right. So that's awesome. So catch us up real quick to where you're at now.
Okay.
Tell us your story, how you got there, what you've done in the past, just so people kind of know the journey that you've traveled.
Okay. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, lived there kind of my whole life. That my mom was divorced when I was young. So we spent some time in Ohio, in like Shadyside, St. Clairsville, Ohio. And then my mom moved us back to Pittsburgh, where she got remarried. So I grew up my whole life from as early as I can really remember in Pittsburgh. I went to Baldwin High School down in the South Hills, not too far from the city of Pittsburgh. From there, I went and played college football at Boise State. My uncle, people always say, how'd you get from Pittsburgh, PA to Boise, Idaho? My uncle knew Dan Hawkins. So I got lucky too. And this is back with VHS tapes and stuff. And my uncle said, would you move across the country and play at Boise if they wanted you? Sure. So he gave him my VHS tape of one of my high school games, and they called and I went out and visited, and it was like anything I've ever seen before. The Boise River flowed right through town. And I'm like, man, this is beautiful. Like, this is really cool. There's other things in the world rather than just, downtown Pittsburgh. So moved out to Boise, Idaho, played my college ball there. It was an outstanding experience. And that's where, and I wouldn't have known it at the time. That's where I learned that I wanted to be a strength coach. I had incredible high school coaches. Tim Robbins is at Upper St. Clair now. He was one of my high school coaches, and Mike Silanoff is the O-line coach at Duquesne. So they were incredible coaches. They really made me fall in love with the sport of football. I went off to college, and one of the absolute best coaches I've ever had, and it's why I'm a strength coach, is Tim Saha. He was my strength coach for 4 years there. And I absolutely fell in love with the weight room. Truth be told, I remember being sad after my last workout, thinking like, man, I don't get a workout anymore. I got to go play football. And that might sound crazy, but I fell in love with training, and football was just kind of like, yeah, I'll go play football. After my last football game, I wasn't sad that football was done. I remember me standing with Coach Saha on the field, like, I don't get to work out with you anymore. So I really fell in love with it then. I wouldn't have been able to tell you right there, well, I want to be a strength coach. I think at that point, I knew I wanted to coach. So I graduated from Boise. I had to have a pretty serious surgery on my knee. So I had to stay out there for a little bit longer after my last game, got that all cleared up, moved back to Pittsburgh and started coaching football. I started coaching O-line at Moon High School down in Pittsburgh, and working in the weight room a little bit. And again, I remember working the weight room and loving it. And then I'd go to like football meetings, the head coaches breaking down film. And I'm like, I don't love this. I miss training. So the season ended, and I called Coach Saha and I said, how do I do what you do? How do I do it? How do I become a strength coach? And he said, I remember him telling me, my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, we were standing in our apartment, and I remember him telling me, you can come back out to Boise and intern for me. But so much of the profession is also who you know, and you already know me. You've already played for me for 4 years. I could teach you a lot, but it wouldn't expand your network at all. He said the best guy to work for in the profession is Tommy Moffitt down at LSU. I said, okay. And I didn't know Coach Moffitt at the time. So I went on Google, I think, and found Coach Moffitt's email address and just sent him a cold email. Attached my resume, attached my cover letter, kind of explained to him what I just explained to you guys. I played college football, but I really fell in love with the weight room, and I want to be a strength coach. And I was told, you're the best guy to work for. And I was working at GNC at the time, I believe. I was doing all kinds of things. I was coaching, working at GNC. I was a counselor in the detention center at a detention home in Pittsburgh, and that was a wild job. So I was doing a lot of things, but I was leaving GNC, and I got a phone call from a 225 number. Well, so I answered, and it's Coach Moffitt. And he has a great Tennessee Southern accent. And I just kind of remember him saying, if you want to come intern, I want to offer you an internship. Went home, talked about it with, again, my wife now, girlfriend at the time. And I was working on my master's degree in counseling at Cal U. It's a small school down in PA. And I had class that evening. So I'm sitting in class, and I remember the professor saying, can anybody else see them? And it's funny how the universe, God, or whatever you want to call it, works. The professor asked the question, can any of you see yourselves doing anything other than counseling? And I'm like, yeah. I raise my hand, and I look around, and nobody else has their hand raised. I'm like, oh, damn. And the professor was like, well, then you should probably go do that. And I'm like, fuck, okay. And he's like, let me ask, what would that be? And I was like, I kind of want to be a strength coach. And this counseling professor was like, then you need to go do that. I'm like, okay, all right, like, I hear you. I'm going to go do it. So I get home, and I tell my wife, I think I should do this. And she's like, go for it. Like, you need to just go for it. So I did. I sold my comic book collection. I'm a dork. I say I'm the Kevin Smith of strength and conditioning. I sold my comic book collection. He sold his to make clerks. I sold mine to go intern at LSU. So I sold that, sold my TV, sold a bunch of stuff, and saved up enough money to intern through the summer. And if I made it, great. If not, I'll figure something out. So I did. I packed up my stuff and moved down to Baton Rouge and started my internship and had an absolute blast. And then, Coach Saha was the reason I wanted to be a coach. And then Coach Moffitt taught me how to be a coach. And the other guys that I was surrounded with during that experience, Eric Donoval and Ryan Philo and Josh Lawson, and some really awesome coaches that helped me a ton on my internship. I just had an absolute blast. So towards the end of my internship, there were a couple of GAs. I think Ryan Philo came to me and said, hey, I think there's going to be a GA at Southern Miss or some other schools. And I'm thinking to myself, money's running out. Yeah, I need a GA. So I went in one day and asked Coach Moffitt, hey, I know I'm a young intern. I've only been here a few months. Is it okay if I use you as a reference? And he said, yeah, sure. So I leave and I start putting my stuff together, and I'm going to give my things to Ryan Philo to get to whoever he knew. I think he might have known Paul Jackson or somebody who was looking for a GA. Moffitt called me in the next day, and he's funny. Yeah, I could do a Coach Moffitt impression. He called me and said, hey, Benny, you want a fucking GA? Sorry for cussing. And I was like, yes, sir. I'm looking for one right now. He's like, no, I mean here. I'm like, oh, yes, sir. Absolutely. He said, well, you got 3 days to get into grad school, so figure it out. I'm like, oh, okay. So Eric Donoval was a GA at the time. He kind of helped me figure out who I had to contact on campus. I think I had to take my GRE or something. I scheduled like for the next day. Didn't even have a chance to study. I went to my GRE, got the score I needed. Me and Eric went and celebrated with like Wendy's cheeseburger or something crazy. I got into school and got my GA. And then me and Eric Donoval kind of came up together at LSU as GAs. So towards the end of our time there, he was offered a job at Ole Miss. I was offered a job back at Boise with Coach Saha. So we both kind of went to Coach Moffitt and said, our GA's coming to an end. We love you, but we kind of need jobs at this point. He said, turn them down. I'm keeping you guys here. We're like, well, coach, we're GAs. You can't just keep us. He said, no, I'm turning them into full-time spots. Turn the jobs down. I don't want to lose you guys. So we're like, damn, okay. So we did. We turned the jobs down, and Coach Moffitt turned our GAs into full-time spots. So we stayed there for a while. I did leave for a little bit to go to Youngstown. And that was a really good experience for me. I wasn't looking to leave LSU, but Bo Pelini took the Youngstown job. I ended up getting really close with one of the athletic trainers at LSU, and he's still there. His name's Jack Marucci. He's from Pittsburgh. I remember him calling me in the training room and saying, would you want me to give your information to Bo Pelini? He's looking for a strength coach. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Didn't think much of it. Coach Bo ended up calling me and offering me the head job there. And again, I was nervous to do it. Wasn't quite sure if I was ready. I had things were good at LSU. My wife was pregnant. But me and my wife decided, let's go for it. Because at some point in my career, I do want to be a head strength coach. So let's just kind of go for it. And we did. So I wasn't there long. I was there maybe like 10 months. And again, I wasn't looking to leave Youngstown. And that's never really how I've been. I've never been somewhere looking for the next thing. It just kind of has happened. So I'm at Youngstown. I'm coaching. My wife was having a hard time finding work. Money was really, really tight. We were kind of going into debt. I think I was making like $40,000 a year, and she wasn't working, and we're trying to raise a kid. So money was tight, and my buddy Ryan Philo left for the head job at UTSA. And Moffitt called and said, would you want to come back? And he offered me a salary that was definitely going to help raise our family. And I loved Coach Moffitt. Eric was still there. Loved LSU. So it was easy to go back, work there for a couple of years. Again, as a higher level assistant, if you will. And then I remember we were on the bus going to play Alabama. So like we were in Birmingham or something. And Coach Saha called me, and he had been an assistant at Wyoming at one time. So he still kind of knew people at Wyoming. And he said, hey, Coach Bowl lost his strength coach before the season, didn't want to hire anybody through the season. Do you want me to put your name in? Like I said, I'm on the bus heading to the game right now. Can we talk later? So in talking to Coach Saha and then talking to other people that had known Coach Bowl and known Wyoming, I thought, this might be a really good opportunity here to be the head strength coach for a really good coach like Coach Bowl at a program like Wyoming. Let's kind of put my name in and see what happens. So Coach Bowl ended up calling me. I went out there on an interview, and I had learned during my time at Youngstown, there were a couple of things I learned where who you surround yourself with is just as important as, who you are. And at Youngstown, I didn't really have much help. So in interviewing with Coach Bowl, I loved it in Wyoming. I loved Coach Bowl. But when he offered me the job, I was adamant that I was able to bring Eric Donoval with me. We had been together a long time. He's the most brilliant guy I know when it comes to training. I learned so much from him during my time at LSU. Good friend of mine. We were in each other's weddings. We still talk all the time. So I told Coach Bowl, I'll come, but I want Eric Donoval to come with me, and I want us to kind of run the thing together. Again, I always try to set my ego to the side and think what would be best. And he and I had talked about what if we could run a program together one day. So Coach Bowl said, okay, what would the salary have to be for Eric? And I kind of threw the number at him. He said, okay. So shit. All right, you want to go, man? So we flew out there, and, the next thing was, we're not going to move out there unless our wives can see it. That was another mistake I made at Youngstown. didn't really go out and see it first. So I learned from that. They flew us both out. Our wives liked it, and we decided to go for it. And kind of, not that Coach Moffitt isn't incredible, but let's go see if we can kind of do this thing without Coach Moffitt. Let's go for it. So we went out there. We were there together for 2 years. Other opportunities came up during my time there. Weren't right, not the right time, different things like that. But when Coach Miles called, when he was at Kansas, he was the head coach at LSU for 7 years while I was there, six years maybe. And I loved Coach Miles. Always treated my family great. Always treated everybody in the building great. And there's things that happen that have been said in the media, and I'm not gonna get in any of that. I just remember how he treated myself and my family. So I wanted to go work for him. To me, it wasn't about Kansas. It wasn't, I have to leave Wyoming, and it wasn't anything like that. It was, Coach Miles wants me to come be his head strength coach. Like, I remember being a young intern and like, that's Les Miles. And now he's calling me. That's a really cool thing. But again, let's go for it. So went out there, saw it, talked to Coach Miles, and decided to go be the head guy at Kansas. And me and Eric talked, and same idea, kind of leaving LSU, let's go out and do this thing, not with Coach Moffitt anymore. We were like, what if you stayed and were the head guy at Wyoming, and I went and did this thing at Kansas? Let's kind of do it on our own. So did it. Went to Kansas, and that was an absolutely insane time. So I get to Kansas, and I think it was like 6 weeks later, COVID happened. So I was able to train the kids for about 6 weeks. Then we got shut down through the whole winter. Came back in the summer, and like one of our freshmen tested positive. So we got shut down in the summertime again, going back and forth. Are we going to play the season? Are we not? They decided we're going to play the season. Hey, you got 10 days to get the kids ready for the season. I got 10 days. And you can only have 8 guys per group, including your coaches. Okay. So we navigated that, went through the season, came back in winter. Again, 6 weeks with the kids, and then Coach Miles got fired. And it was kind of keeping the team together through spring ball. Then I got fired after spring ball. And then again, call it God, call it the universe, call it whatever you want to call it. An opening comes at the University of Pittsburgh, and both me and my wife are from Pittsburgh. I didn't know Mike Sticotti personally. I knew Anthony Paroli. He's another guy from Pittsburgh. He's with Tampa Bay now. He and I just kind of got to know each other through coaching. So he called and said, Stack's going to have an assistant spot at Pitt. Would you want to go back home? So again, I remember, I think I just got done working out like a local gym. I went home. I said, babe, you're not going to believe this. There's going to be an assistant job at Pitt. Like, what do you think? I got to work. I have to coach. I can't not coach. I'll go insane if I do that. So yeah, let's go for it. So I accepted the assistant job at Pitt, and that was an incredible experience. Kenny Pickett was unbelievable to see live, one of the best leaders I've ever been around. And then he gets drafted by the Steelers, which was really cool. We win the ACC championship, and, I told my wife, things always happen for a reason. I could have never left Kansas to come do this, but like, what an incredible experience where we landed. So that was awesome. Incredible time at Pitt, met some awesome people there. And then after the ACC championship game, from a distance, I had always really respected Coach Moorhead. Again, when you're from Pittsburgh, you kind of pay attention to Pittsburgh people. So I always kind of followed his career. I actually interviewed with him when he went to Mississippi State, and really enjoyed my time talking to him. I remember sitting at breakfast with my wife, and Coach Moorhead calls and, hey, you're my guy. You want to come? I'm like, what? Are you serious? I said, let me talk to my wife, and I'll call you back this evening. So me and my wife talked, and same thing. great experience at Pitt. But where I'm at in my career now, I feel like I can have a bigger influence and do more just in the position of head strength coach. It's not, I've got to be the head guy. I just feel I can have a bigger impact in a head role. And working for a coach, that's how I know Coach Moorhead is, and it's how he is, that's going to let me do my job. It was just kind of a no-brainer for us. So I accepted the job. One of my guys that was at Kansas with me, was at Wyoming with me. He was kept at Kansas, but he left Kansas to come here with me. And it's been incredible being here. Our young men are awesome. Coach Moorhead's awesome. The town's awesome. We're extremely blessed. That's kind of my path right there. It's been crazy. And I'm sure it'll continue to be crazy, but it is what it is. I enjoy it.
Hey man, that's awesome. And I think it's important, if we have any young strength coaches listening, to understand the flexibility, not only from a mental aspect of dealing with all of those changes, where you're living, where you call home, the different teams that you have to work with, the different coaches, and every coach has a different personality. So being able to be flexible and have success at each of those spots. And that's just from a mental standpoint, not from like the physical, actual, like annoying process of like getting up and moving. And then, having the faith that your wife had in you to be able to say like, yeah, let's go do this. And I think that's something that, coaches that are either getting into exercise science as their undergrad program, they think they're just going to wind up with a GA, get hired by the same place, buy their time, and then get to a head position, in a matter of 5 years, and they know everything and they're good to go. On the flip side of that is, I don't think coaches that are getting into exercise science understand the mental flexibility and the learning new skills that you need to learn in the private sector, whether that be sales or communication or understanding basic business principles. So, I really appreciate you sharing that full story, because, I hope the coaches that are listening can take away, what that path looks like, and can understand that, like, okay, this is a hard job. This is a hard career path to get into, and you will get washed out if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're doing it to be the expert in the room, you're going to get washed out. If you're doing it because you think you're the smartest exercise scientist there is, you're going to get washed out. So I really appreciate, sharing the journey. And that's why I was excited when I was reading your bio, and when I was talking to one of our athletes that we share. That's how we got connected. Was, I think he asked me for a book recommendation. Hey, what should I read to learn about strength and conditioning? He's like, bro, you've been training with me for 4 years. Stop it. Read psychology, learn how to sell. He went to you and asked the same question, and you said, dude, get a psychology book. And I'm like, oh, I got to meet this guy. So it's so awesome to hear that background, and then being able to hear a little bit more about your thought process and how you don't take for granted the opportunities that are put in front of you, and you chase those things down with a passion and with intensity, and you appreciate every step of the way, and the people that you've met and the relationships that you've built. And because of those relationships, not because of the X's and O's, it's because of the relationships, you've left every facility better than you found it. And that's why you get new opportunities.
That's always my.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And I'll say this. I couldn't, and it's because you kind of brought it up. I couldn't have done this without a woman that's as strong as my wife. Leaving LSU the first time wasn't too bad. We just had the first time we left Pittsburgh to go down to LSU was kind of, let's pack up and go. Now with 3 kids, these last couple of years have been crazy. We bought a home in Kansas. We thought we were going to be settled in Kansas. We had no intentions of ever leaving Kansas, and we get fired. And then it's like, oh shit, we have to leave Kansas. You should go, let's pack up and do it. And we get to Pittsburgh, and we kind of get settled into Pittsburgh, and it's, babe, Coach Moorhead just called me, like, that's a really good opportunity. Okay, let's pack up the house and move to Akron. And she's just the strongest woman I know. Couldn't have done it without her. Seriously, couldn't have done it without her. And then the other thing you mentioned, and I think you were so dead right on it. What it's not easy being fired. It's definitely not easy being fired. Not any coach that tells you it is lying to you. That it sucks to to be told, you can't work here anymore. But what I will say, what made it easier for me is I try to never be driven by my persona or my ego having to show how great I am or how smart I am. I always kind of talk to my staff or young strength coaches that contact me about having a transcendent aim underneath whatever it is that your goals are. You know, I'm not going to tell you not to have goals. If you want to be an assistant strength coach here or a head strength coach here, like, set those goals and go for it. If you want to go into the private sector and open your own facility, like, yes, go for it, all for it. But underneath all of that, have something deeper that you can root yourself in when times get hard. And it might not just be getting fired. It could be, dealing with administration. If you're working in the university, sometimes they throw crazy things your way. You're like, what? Things on the private side that I would know nothing about. I've never worked in the private side. I'm sure you deal with things outside of just training athletes that can kind of bog you down a little bit, whether it's the business side of things or whatever it might be. So I always tell them, be rooted in something deeper so that when difficulties come, you have those deep roots and you're not going to get washed away. Like for me, I always tell my staff, my goal is to help young men reach their full potential while I strive to reach mine. And if I have the opportunity to do that, any of the other crap that comes my way, it's easier to deal with. And then that way too, if I do reach one of my goals, then I don't get complacent. And I think that happens a lot. Somebody sets a goal of, I want to become this, and then they become that. Then what? Then what? You accomplish your goal. Now what? So underneath everything, I always tell people, have what I call a transcendent aim, something deeper that's going to keep you going when the hard times come. And I've always been rooted in something just a little bit deeper. And Coach Saha did that for me. I was never a great player at Boise. I led her 2 years, but I was by no means a captain or a superstar or anything. But he coached me and loved me as if I was Ryan Clady, who was in my class and went 9th overall. So he did that for me. So I want to do that for other people. He helped me get not even close to reaching my full potential, but set me on that path. So if I can do a fraction of that for one kid that I coach, then I've had a successful career. So the transition of going from head strength coach at Kansas to assistant at Pitt, I didn't care about the title. I had the opportunity to coach. I had the opportunity to help somebody maybe reach their potential. Where some coaches, they kind of get wiped out by the crap that the world can throw at you, by getting fired or whatever other difficulties there are. Root yourself in something deeper. So when those difficulties come, it's easy to navigate.
Coach, one thing you brought up, which I think was a common theme kind of through your journey, was turnover. Right? I was here, felt really good, went to the next spot, was here, felt really good, went to the next spot. So something I've always been interested in at the collegiate level for strength training is not only like James had just talked about, was, dealing with kind of failure, if we want to call it that, which I don't even think that's a good word, but just kind of like moving on. What I'm interested in is what makes Coach Iannachione, did I say that correctly?
Iannachione, close enough.
Iannachione. Sorry. What makes Coach Iannachione the one that people reach out to hire? Right? Hey, we have this position. Yeah. This is the guy I want. What is it about you, with all these other coaches around, a ton of people trying to do what you're doing? What is it about you that has these guys, make you number one on their speed dial for this position?
That's an interesting question, because the way my name has gotten to people, and I've gotten phone calls, hasn't been through people that like I thought it would. There was a guy at LSU named Charles Baglio, and he was our director of high school relations. And while Bo Pelini was the DC at LSU, he became really close with Charles Baglio and Jack Marucci, the athletic trainer and the director of high school relations. I didn't work with those guys a lot, but they watched me. And one thing Coach Moffitt often said to us that I really believe to be true is everything that you do is your job interview. You never know who it is that might be watching you, that might be the one to give your name to somebody. And he had his stories that he would tell us about how he went from Tennessee to Miami and he had no idea, Miami to LSU. And so those two guys were the ones that kind of put my name in at Youngstown. And during my time there, I was an assistant. I really answered to Coach Moffitt. I didn't answer to really Jack. I never really dealt with Coach Baglio. But when Coach Pelini called me, he said, Bag says you're incredible and Marucci says you're incredible. I'm like, Baglio, like what? And then at Wyoming, we had, he was the offensive coordinator. He was our OC at LSU. His name was Steve Cragthorpe. He ended up getting sick, so he stopped being the OC and just kind of stayed around as an analyst. And like I told you, Saha called me and mentioned the job was coming over and see new people. But Coach Cragthorpe really knew Coach Bowl. And again, I never really worked with Coach Cragthorpe. He was an analyst upstairs. And I remember him grabbing me in the locker room before the Texas A&M game and saying, hey, I talked to Craig for you, like, it's looking good. And I'm like, what? Like, we don't really even work with each other, but thank you. With Coach Moorhead, it was Anthony Paroli and Dom DeSico. Dom DeSico is now a scout for the San Francisco 49ers. While I was at Wyoming, I was lucky. We had Marcus Epps, who's a starting safety for the Eagles, Logan Wilson, who's starting with the Bengals. We had some really good players, so these scouts would be around. Dom DeSico grew up in Pittsburgh, not far from me, and he would come watch Logan work out and watch our workouts and watch me and was like, you're good at what you do. And I'm like, fuck, I'm trying, man. I don't. So those guys kind of gave my name to Coach Moorhead. So then when I study it further, because I've asked myself that, like, what is it even that like I inherently see in an intern, somebody that comes in interns for me that makes me go like, that guy's going to be good? Or what have I done that other coaches have been like, this guy's going to be good? Because I'll be honest with you, if we would have talked in the first 5 years of my career, I would have told you that I was terrible. I'm the worst strength coach in the world. I remember, I'll tell you a story. I remember we had a D end at LSU. He tore his patella tendon. And I remember Coach Moffitt coming in the office, and I was an intern or just started my GA at the time. Coach Moffitt came in the office, head in his hands, and was like, J Mac just tore his patella tendon. And all the other guys are like, damn. And I'm sitting there like, okay. Coach Moffitt leaves. And I looked at Eric Donovan and Ryan Filer, and I said, what's a patella tendon? Like, I'm not kidding you guys. I knew nothing about strength and conditioning. I knew that I loved
elbow injury, I'm sure. Patella, right?
Yeah. I was like, well, what is that? Is
where's this thing? Yeah.
That is. So if you would have asked me things the first 5 years of my career, I would have told you I was the worst coach in the world, that I know nothing. But when I look back on it, what I always did, I inherently did it. Maybe it's in my DNA. Maybe it's who I am. Maybe I learned it from my coaches. Maybe it's a combination of everything. I've always just loved the athletes that I was coaching. I've always tried to treat them as if, now I can say it, as if they were my own kids. And I've always tried to do right by the athletes, no matter what. Even if that meant me and Coach Moffitt getting into arguments, even if that meant me as a head strength coach arguing with the head football coach. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a strength coach that comes out and does one of these workouts just to make them puke because they need to be tough. No. I will lose my job before I do wrong by the kids. So that's something I have always done that I think got recognized. Like you guys mentioned, not about the X's and the O's or the programming or anything like that. I think people have always recognized that I will always do right by the young men that I coach. The other thing that and this would go back to where I think society is kind of going nowadays. I've never felt entitled to anything. I still come to work now, 13 years into the profession with the mindset of an intern. I still walk into the building and walk around the track and pick up any of the garbage that was left the night before. I'll still walk around the weight room and clean the weight room. Like my interns are out there cleaning right now, and like I feel bad I'm not out there with them. So I've always had that mindset too. My mom got remarried when I was young. So I have a stepdad. I called him my dad. He's my dad. He raised me. He was the maintenance guy to school. And I worked for him every summer growing up, where we stripped and waxed floors and cut the grass and shoveled snow and cleaned up after the carnival and all kinds of stuff. So I've always kind of brought that mindset with me, where it's not necessarily me comparing myself to other people. It's not, oh, I have to outwork you. It's, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can. And I'm going to do the very best with what I've got. So I think I've always kind of been one of the hardest working guys in the room too. And if I look back on it, that's kind of what made me good as a player too. I'm by no means a great athlete. I mean, I played guard, but even in high school, I would work out with the high school team. Then I'd work a side job, work for my dad, save some money, and then I would go pay for private training later on in the evening, because I just thought I had to work. So I've always been willing to do whatever it needs to be done to get the job done. And I think society isn't kind of teaching that to young men and young women anymore. But I think it always gets recognized, because I think it's inherently something that we should do. So that if you're asking me, I think that's probably what stood out. I think people have probably recognized that if you hire me, you're going to hire somebody that will always do right by the players, and you're going to hire someone that's willing to work himself to the bone to get the job done. And I don't ever want to lose. If I ever lose that mindset, then it's time for me to get out of coaching.
I think, what you just said is like, we don't have that situation where we're teaching kids that mindset of, I'm not entitled, I have to work, eat what you kill, that type of, and I've always wondered, like, okay, how do we teach that to somebody that doesn't have it? And now I'm kind of thinking of like, well, it's not something that you necessarily teach, but it's like creating that environment that it can be learned within that environment. And I was lucky enough to grow up in an environment that let me succeed. It let me fail. It showed me that I wasn't good at certain things, but it also showed me I could work to be better at those things. Let's talk about what that environment that you're creating for, the Akron football team in your weight room. What are some of those things you do intentionally to create that environment where they can start to learn that mindset?
I believe, and I think this is where some coaches go wrong, where they want to tell the kids, you need to work harder, you need to sacrifice more, and they use these great quotes and all this other stuff, but they don't live it. There's a great psychologist named Jean Piaget, and he was a behaviorist, and it's kind of self-explanatory, but he says human beings learn by observing, they then act out what they observe. So he kind of equated, that's why like little girls play house. They watch mom, and they don't necessarily mimic mom. They watch what mom does, and then they go play house. And that's how they kind of learn to be mom. I watch my boys. If you would ask my boys, what do you want to do when you grow up? They're both going to say, I want to be a strength coach. They don't even know what that is, but they know dad does it. Or they want to be NHL hockey players, because the only sport I really like to watch is hockey. Football will be on sometimes. I really love hockey. So they're going to be hockey players and strength coaches, because that's what dad likes to do. And they act those things out. So I think a lot of the times coaches want to tell players what they're doing wrong, where they're screwing up, where they could be better, instead of going, where can I be better? Where can I work harder? Where can I sacrifice more? Where can I show the kids what it is that I want them to do? Because I really believe that if they're not acting in a way that you want them to act, you're not being genuine in what you're saying and how you're acting. There's a schism there. You're saying one thing, but they're observing another thing. So I think that's the first place to look. I always believe the first place to look is within. If I'm not getting what I want, where am I screwing up? So that's why, if they walk in here, they'll see me cleaning with my interns. So that when I tell them, hey, older guys, instead of beating up the young guys, pull them in and love on them and teach them how to be. They've seen me do it as head strength coach with my interns. I'm not above anything. I'm older now, but I just try to keep up on deadlifts there with my staff. I got blown out of the water. I'm not as young as I once was, but I try to work out with them still. I try to push myself still. And Sean came in here and he was foam rolling while we were deadlifting. He saw it all go down. One guy pulled like 600. I'm like, okay, I can't do that anymore. So I act it out first. And then they observe it. And then I'm not one of these coaches that think kids need this long-winded talk and motivational speech after every single workout. But I do believe, I try to not go on Twitter a ton because it kind of drives me crazy. I don't know if it's my age or if it's who I am, but you could find on Twitter that speed training is very important. Then you could also find on Twitter that like speed training is stupid. You can find on Twitter that like strength is king. You can find on Twitter that like you shouldn't train for maximum strength at all. So it's like, I don't even know what's going on Twitter half the time, but I have seen a lot of strength coaches now talking about you can't develop mental toughness. And I don't know if that's true. Now, again, I'm not one to say that I need to bring in like Navy SEALs and do like Navy SEAL type workouts. I don't go that extreme with it. But I do think there still is a time and a place, not all the time, not every day, maybe every other week or so, to set up a workout that is going to be difficult. And not to be a jerk or not to just gas the kids and not to be the strength coach. I laid them out today and look how tough I am. I believe, and again, I kind of took this from Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey and some of the mythologies and different things I've studied. Again, I pulled from outside of strength and conditioning. I do believe that there is a lesson that we can teach young men where, and I keep saying young men because I'm working with young men right now, where I'm going to put you in a position to do a difficult thing. That difficult thing might scare you. Nowadays you hear guys, fear no man. No, we all have fears. We're all scared of something. We're scared of the unknown. That's one of the deep ancient truths. You guys brought up the yin yang. That's order and chaos. We're scared of what we don't know. We're apprehensive. We're vulnerable in those situations. So there are times where I set up workouts. We did it with the big guys yesterday on sled conditioning. We did some power conditioning on sleds. Where before the workout, I explained to them, look, there is a rational reason why we're doing this. This type of conditioning is conducive to what you do on the field. You push against somebody for 4 quarters. So to condition you, I'm going to have you push against something. I'm not going to just come out here and run gassers and stuff. There's a reason we're doing it, but it's also going to be really, really difficult. I want them to understand that I am the type of young man that can see a difficult thing, take on that difficult thing, conquer that difficult thing, and then know that, and I'm going to get fired up. I'm going to start cussing. I got to pull back a little bit. And know that I am the type of man that when a difficult thing comes my way, I can bear that burden. And that is a deep truth. If you study old mythologies, even if you look at some of the movies that are popular now, if you look at the movie It, Carl Jung has a quote, that what you need the most is found where you least want to look. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out exploring like dangerous situations. Often it's within. So a lot of the times you tell a kid it's gonna be a hard workout, and there are young men that start going, oh shit, I don't know if I can do this. It's gonna be tough. What if I throw up? No, you can do it, and you will do it. And then after you do it, you know you're the type of man that can do it. And the hero in old stories is often called to explore the unknown. And within the unknown is something deeply terrifying. So like in the movie It, have you guys seen the movie It?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the scary clown that is represented by their deepest, darkest fears lives down in the deep, dark sewer. And the only way for them to defeat the clown is to go down into the sewer on its level, and then they can defeat the clown by voluntarily confronting it. So I think as a coach, sometimes it's my responsibility to put them in a situation where they have to confront something that's going to be difficult, that's going to be hard, that they're not quite sure if they know if they can do it, and then set it up where they can do it, and then tell them, look what you just accomplished. So when you go off to play a football game on Saturdays, and I think beyond Saturdays, do I want these kids to win the MAC championship? Yeah, that'd be awesome. But I have championship rings. They're like in a drawer somewhere in my house. I don't care. I want them to leave here, go off into the real world, and become CEOs one day, where they show up to work and people are complaining about, I had to get up so early and I worked late last night. And they're like, that's not difficult. I used to have workouts at 6 a.m., meetings all day, practice, and this shit's easy to me. My strength coach used to make me do power conditioning on sleds, and we'd be puking sometimes, and we just kept going like, this is easy. Where had they never experienced those difficulties as young student athletes, they might be the people walking to the office one day like, oh, this is so hard. I'm so tired. And I don't want that for them. I want them to know that they can identify something hard, identify something scary, and then voluntarily confront it. And then by doing that, you get made of more. You then know you're the type of person that can take on hard things. But again, it still comes back to, if I'm going to ask that of them, then I'm going to ask it of myself. So that's why physically I can't necessarily do what I used to be able to do, but I still ride the Peloton bike, and I'm terrible at riding steady state cardio for an hour, and they're yelling at me, pick up the cadence. I'm like, you're killing me here. I still try to jump in on deadlifts with my staff. I try to read people like Nietzsche and some of these people where I read a couple sentences. I'm like, what the hell did they just say? Like, I got to pull out a dictionary. I've got to like go on YouTube and see if somebody can explain this to me. I try to push myself out of my comfort zone wherever I can. So when I ask them to do it, I'm being genuine about it. I'm not asking them to do something that I'm not trying to do myself. So I live it first. I have a reason for why I ask them to do it, and then I demand it of them. I'm never gonna be the kind of strength coach that's running people till they puke just to run people till they puke. But I do believe every so often it is important to set up situations that are going to be difficult. And if you quantified the distance or anything like that, is it the absolute best training from a physiological standpoint? I don't know. You know, this winter we did some what I called zip shuttles, where it'd be 5 back, 10 back, 15 back, or always, I would tell them, always touch with your right hand. If anybody on the team doesn't touch with the right hand, it doesn't count. Always touch the left hand, always face this direction. We're gonna go 5 back, 15 back, 10 back. If anybody does it wrong, it doesn't count. So the first time we did it, the yardage got to a point where it was like, might have been a little bit too much, but in putting them in that situation where we had a bunch of reloads and guys weren't doing well, and kind of chaos broke out, I was able to call them back up and say, all I did was create a chaotic environment. And then you guys responded by getting even more chaotic, arguing with each other, yelling at each other. Nobody was the voice of order. So what I want you guys to understand is, sometimes as your strength coach, I'm going to make it chaotic. I'm gonna reload reps that you guys might have done right. Because in a football game, you might have perfect coverage, ref might throw a flag. then what? Are you going to sit there and argue with the ref for the next 3 plays and let up a touchdown? In the real world, in my situation, I get fired from Kansas for something that happened 10 years ago at LSU. What am I going to do? Am I going to quit and give up? Or am I going to find order in my life? And I only say that because my hope is when these young men leave me, when the difficulties of the world and the unfairness of the world, or whatever you want to call it, gets thrown their way, they kind of understand what's happening. Chaos is coming in. I've got to find order. What little things can I do to provide order for myself? So the first time we ran those zip shuttles, I think I had like 9 of them programmed. And we ended up running like 21 of them, like way more than I wanted to, and they were just screwing up because they screwed up once. I said, so-and-so touched with the wrong hand. And it turned into them arguing with each other. And I didn't say anything. I just stood back, and that led to another reload and another reload and another reload. But then I brought them up after and I educated them. Here's what happened. And it's a deep psychological truth. Again, that's what the yin yang is. And that is thousands of years old. Order and chaos. I flooded you guys. That's the story in the Bible. That's the flood. I flooded you guys with chaos. And then you just reverted to more chaos, and it led to a really bad workout. So my challenge is next time that I come at you guys and I'm providing chaos, I want to see somebody step up and provide some order. If any of you ever want to get in front of the team and call you guys up and talk and provide order for the group and not allow the bickering to happen, not allow the bitching to happen, not allow the complaining to happen, and keep yourselves focused, do it. It's your team. It's not my team. Understand what I'm trying to get done. So then by the last week, again, 9 programmed, I think we ended up running only like 11 of them. So again, from a physiological standpoint, should we have run 21 shuttles? No. Did I want to run 21 shuttles? Hell no. But I wanted to teach them a lesson. And if we went too far from a volume standpoint in January, I don't think that's going to kill us come August and September. The lesson I was able to teach them, I think will pay dividends not only in the season, but throughout the rest of their life. So I think with how rational coaching has become, like if we can't quantify it and if we don't have exact reasons for why we're doing it, then it's bad training. And maybe, but I'm going to stay rooted in something deeper than just training. I want to set them up to be the type of young men that can take on the unfairness of the world and the difficulties of the world. Because when they leave us, nobody's quantifying, oh, don't fire him. That's unfair. Well, it's the way the world works. Now what? Now what? So I want to teach them those lessons. So those are some things I do. And it's not every week. It's not every day. In this summer, it'll be like the last 4 or 5 weeks of summer, but we already kind of laid the foundation back in winter where they know what's coming. We've already educated on them. So I'm hoping that we don't have a repeat of the winter. I'm hoping we just get in the yardage that I want to get in. But if not, we're going to keep reloading it till you guys get it right, until somebody steps up and gets guys focused on what we need to be focused on. And I don't ever want to stop doing that, because to me, that kind of transcends just football. That transcends just training. That kind of teaches them a lesson that I hope, and some of them are going to think, what's this crazy guy talking about? Like, we had to run 21 shuttles. That shit sucked. Maybe it doesn't click on my timeline, but maybe 5 years from now, they go, oh, that's what Coach Ben was talking about. And maybe one day it clicks. And so those are the things I kind of do to kind of push them outside their comfort zone and get them to understand why I'm asking them to do it. It's not me just being big bad strength coach with a hard ass workout. It's because I want a better version of you. I tell them often, I'm coaching who you could become. I'm not coaching who you are right now. So who you are right now, yeah, you guys had to run 21 shuttles, but I'm coaching you as if you're the type of team that only has to run 9 shuttles when I want 9 shuttles in. So that's what I'm going to coach. I'm coaching who you can become, not who you are right now. And again, that might not fully click with them, but I hope one day it does.
And I think, there's so many points there that you just hit the nail on the head. And one thing that I'll talk to CT about is like, at the end of the day, we can do what we're intending to do and still not reach everybody. And we have to be okay with that. As a coach, that's what we are
Yeah.
signing up, is to not reach everybody we're in front of,
Yeah.
and be able to put our head down at the end of the day and sleep well still. And hopefully maybe that message clicks, like you said, 5 years from now. But sometimes people
Yeah.
aren't ready to listen. And I really like what you said, is like, I'm not going to give speeches after every hard lifting session, but there's going to be times where I will talk to the team because they are
Yeah.
now ready to listen to the message that I want them to hear.
Correct.
And definitely, you know, appreciate that from I am not here to motivate you and pump your tires every session and tell you how good you are every day and pat you on the butt. But, you know, I am here when you're ready to listen to give you some meaning behind why you're putting pads on, because not everybody's going to go play professional football, even at a MAC program that has really, really good athletes. And it ties back into that underlying message that you've been weaving in, you know, through our conversation here.
Yes,
I do want to ask one more question, because it's a question usually we get to earlier in the podcast, but you know, I think it's important to ask is, as you're going through this process of becoming the man you are today, who eventually will be a different man tomorrow, did you have any major paradigm shifting moments that changed your coaching and how you interact with the athletes that you're in front of? And that could be an X's and O, actually exercises that you are now using that you weren't before. That could be how you are talking and how you are being the head strength coach. Anything along those lines? Did you have a moment that kind of made you pause and rethink and retool your coaching arsenal?
Definitely. And again, I believe I was very blessed in two ways. Where I told you guys I was able to have a dad that was a maintenance worker that instilled in me. I remember him getting up at 5 a.m. or no, 3 a.m. because he had to do all the shoveling for the church lots and things like that. So I just remember him working really, really hard. So I had that to see my whole life. So that was a blessing. And then I was also blessed to kind of start my career at LSU, where having grown up in Pittsburgh, up in the north, things in the South are very different. Poverty is even different down there. So when I first became a coach, I thought everyone was kind of wired like me. We want to work really hard and do the right thing. And I had this dad that made me work hard. So like, it's what we do. And there was a young man that I was responsible for. When I first got there, I was in charge of the offensive line, and he played O-line. And I had a couple experiences, and I'll talk about a couple of them. He came from like serious poverty, didn't come from much at all. And his mom had a dog that she kept in the front yard, and it was her dog. But unbeknownst to him, she had like signed the dog under his name, and she would use the dog to like attack people. So the dog attacked a postal worker one day. So when they came to take the dog, it was under the young man that I was training. It was under his name. So he got in trouble for it. And the mom said, no, it's his. And this was a kid that I always had difficulties with. He'd come late to things. He'd miss things. He'd fall out of workouts. He was just kind of lazy. And it drove me nuts, because if I was anything, I wasn't going to be lazy. I couldn't understand why he wouldn't just do the right thing. So I remember sitting on a bench one day with Coach Moffitt after all this kind of went down with him and the dog, and he had to go back and go to court and all this other stuff. And I remember saying, like, Coach, this kid just like, he's driving me nuts. And I remember Coach Moffitt saying to me, Benny, we get these kids after living a certain way for 18 years. Some of these kids are taught from a very early age, when the bill collectors show up, tell them mom isn't here. So it's ingrained in them from an early age to lie, to not do the right thing, Their parents throw them under the bus when things go wrong. So why would they trust me? And I remember him saying, we only get them for 4 years. Some of them, it's really hard to undo the 18 years that they had before we ever got our hands on them. And I remember thinking like, oh shit, you're right. I was taught to like do the right thing and go to work and work really hard. He was taught to lie, to cheat, to not do the right thing. So that helped me not get as frustrated. And that's when I really started valuing more and more, like bringing them into my office and talking to them and getting to know them. I had another young man tell me, and if this is too graphic, I'm sorry. I remember him telling me, Coach, my earliest memories are my brother putting a gun to my head and making me make crack in the kitchen. Coach, I remember coming home and my mother selling herself for drugs. And it was like, yeah, why would he trust me? Like, I've got to go above and beyond to show him that I care about him. Because my early memories are like birthday parties and things like that. And those are your earliest memories. So that's when I started, like, I don't really care if I get this kid power cleaning really good. Like, yeah, I have to, and I'm going to coach him, and I'm going to teach him, and that's my responsibility. But like, I want to show these young men that there's more to life than, or there's a better way to live than the lived experience you've had before you've met me. Last story, and this one is burned in my memory because it's a young man that I really love and really, really care about. And he struggled. He was, again, one of my guys towards the end of my time. He was a linebacker. Really struggled with getting the things on time, staying off the incident reports and things like that. We're getting ready to go outside and run. And I'm like, let's go. Coach is going to start the workout here in like 5 minutes. And we got to go. He's like, hold on, I got a phone call. I'm like, bro, we got to go. Like, hurry. I said, damn. Okay. Hangs the phone up. I'm like, are you good? He said, my brother just got killed. I said, your brother just got killed? Like, do you need to go back to New Orleans? Do you need me to drive you? What? He said, no, I'm good. I'm straight. He went out and did the workout, did the lift, and never missed a day. And I remember thinking, you are so used to violence. Your brother got murdered and you're not even going to miss a workout. Like, that's the life you grew up around. So then I found myself getting less mad about, oh, he failed another drug test. It's like, yeah, no kidding, he did. Let me have him over to my house and cook him dinner. So again, if the NCAA is listening, I'll probably get in trouble, but I've started having guys over to my house to eat. Like, let me show you like what a good family looks like. Let me show you what I look like as a dad. So you can come over. You guys are used to listening to me and saying, yes, sir. And yes, coach. Come over to my house and my 6 and 4-year-old will like tell me to shut up and they're acting crazy. And let me show you what it looks like when I'm dad. So I've started doing a lot more stuff outside of just coaching. I've let them into my life a little bit more, who I am outside of the weight room, again, so they can see it, so that hopefully one day it clicks and they can be better husbands and fathers and whatever it is that they decide to do. And it's those experiences that have kind of, again, maybe not get so caught up all the time in the nuances of training, and have made me become so obsessed with the human side of things, the spiritual side of things, that other side of coaching that you can't quite quantify. You know, I kind of say there's the rational side of coaching, which we definitely have to be competent in. And then there's also the spiritual side of coaching that you can't necessarily tweet about, you can't quantify, but like, to me, that's everything. And it's some of those experiences that have made me become borderline obsessed with it. How do I do this the right way, so that I can help them be better when they leave me?
Coach, I don't think James and I have any eligibility left, but if we did, we'd sign up to play for you, man. Very inspiring. Appreciate you sharing all the stories. You also maybe sound like you've listened to a Cutoffs and Coffee episode before, because all this stuff you're saying is perfect.
Okay.
The listeners are used to hearing it. I mean, this is wheelhouse stuff for us. We just had a conversation with our college group after playing a game with them for our active recovery day. Just had a conversation about some of the stuff you're talking about. So I so much appreciate you sharing all this information. We want you to have time to be able to go out and help the interns clean up the weight room before the next group comes in. So let's wrap up with this question that we always wrap up with. And I think you're going to have a great answer to this if you already feel like you haven't answered it. But what do you think we as strength and conditioning coaches are missing in the strength and conditioning industry?
Self-work. I think, and again, this is my own thought process. I think in our profession, a lot of us as a profession as a whole, we like to show and prove what we know and what we do and how great we are. And look, I got this athlete when I first met him, he ran a 1.0 flying 10, and now he runs a 0.89. And look how great my programming is. And look at the velocities my guys hit. And great. I think a lot of that stems from insecurities. So we project out, look how good I am, instead of why am I the way that I am? What are my vulnerabilities? What are my insecurities? Where can I improve? And constantly check yourself. Am I projecting out, or am I really doing this for the betterment of the kids? That's why I'm not super active on social media. Like here, the video people come and film, and I say, go put it out there. Like if there's a bad looking exercise on it, I don't care. Like we're not perfect. Okay. I think as coaches, and I don't remember what religion this was. I'm going to butcher. I don't know if it was Buddhist or Hindu or what. You change yourself, you change the world. So I think more coaches need to do deep self-work on themselves. Carl Jung would call integrating themselves, all those deep, shadowy parts of yourself, confront that stuff, integrate it into who you are, and then have better control of yourself, better awareness of yourself, so you can provide a better environment for your athletes. I think we're becoming very, very rational in our field, where we like to prove, I've seen charts of we've increased our power output every week in season. No, you haven't. Like there's no way that you have. What if the running back takes a helmet off the hip one week? You're telling me he comes in the weight room on Monday and his power output increases? Like, fucking doubt it. I doubt it. So let's stop trying to prove how great we are and how smart we are and how much we know. The human body is so complex and every athlete is so different. To say that you've provided the ideal training situation for 100 kids and the time allotment that we have, you're full of shit. And I also think a lot of the data that we talk about now, here's where I find myself questioning. When we talk about things like jump mats, the jump mats and the reactive strength index and things like that, not that I don't like that stuff, but I have to ask myself, is the kid getting better at that drill, or are we actually improving a training quality that translates to better at their sport? Or are we just getting better at that drill? Or does it definitely translate to sport? So I'm not going to get, and not that, look, I do that stuff and I want to track that stuff and I like that stuff, but I'm not going to be one of these guys that tweeted out about, look how great I am in improving the reactive strength index, because I don't know that it makes them better at football. I track it because I don't hear it. I don't have jump mats here. I have tracked it. I've also seen strength coaches, the Polar GPS device, where a lot of strength coaches measure max velocity on. you'll get spikes on it. So like, you'll have a kid that can consistently hit like 20 miles per hour, but every once in a while you'll get a spike of like 30 miles per hour, and you know that's not right. So like, you do away with that spike. Then what happens if there's a day where he hits like 23 miles per hour? I've seen strength coaches go, oh yeah, I'm posting that shit. He increased his max velocity by 2 miles per hour. The second objective data becomes any bit subjective, it's no longer objective. But I see a lot of strength coaches wanting to put out there how great their data is. And I think it's to validate themselves, because I think there's a lot of insecurity in our field. I think there's a lot of persona in our field. I try not to use ego, because the way I understand ego is it's just kind of the you that you think you are. And again, that's just from studying Jung. So I don't really use ego a lot. I use persona a lot. And that's the you that you project to the world. So I believe that our profession is becoming more and more persona driven as it's becoming more rational. I would love to see us become a little bit more spiritual. And that's the best word I can come up with. And I know that word turns some people off, but that's rooted in morality. And that's rooted in doing right by the kids and not proving how great you are. But that comes from a lot of deep self-work, and that stuff's difficult because it's hard to really confront your vulnerabilities and what makes you insecure and those kind of things. And again, some like, oh, that's kind of soft. Well, if you want to see it that way, but the way I understand it, what it's done for me in my life is when you confront those things and then you actually confront them in the real world, you're able to integrate them into who you are. And then you have that dark side of yourself kind of under your control. So when it's time for you to kind of speak your truth, people are more willing to listen, because I never really get overly emotional because I'm kind of in control of who I am. So that's what I would love to see for our field. And not that the rational objective data isn't important. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't love the obsession over it at the cost of, are we growing better young men? And that's kind of what I would like to see in our profession, not losing sight of kind of why we coach. And I don't know if anybody got into coaching I don't know if anybody, their alarm goes off at 3 a.m. and they think, this is worth it because I'm going to post our power clean maxes on Twitter at the end of the day. I don't think that's what got most people into coaching. So I think we need to kind of return to why we coach and what's most important.
Coach, I think you just gave the answer to the previous question of why you keep getting hired. Right. That's it. I mean, if anybody wants to know, just listen to that talk again. We just went almost 2 hours with a head strength and conditioning coach without talking about sets and reps. And I think this is another thing people have to understand. Like, we didn't say one thing about reps or sets or individual exercises. We may have answered something here and there, but it's so much deeper than that. And it goes so much further than what somebody's power clean is, what somebody's jump mat number, what somebody's deadlift is, because that none of that matters to when it comes down to being a human being and playing on the field, which you should be successful at, right? But being an overall amazing human being. And that is exactly why the podcast even started 43 episodes ago, is because we wanted to share this kind of information with people who are kind of stuck in that rut of, it's good. It's got to be 3x10. It's got to be 5x5. It's, how about we don't even talk about that? How about we're grateful for the situation we're in, the people that we surround ourselves with, the culture that we create, the people that we get to see every day because they come to see us because they know we're going to have a positive impact on their life. And I hope that's what our listeners take out of this conversation. And I would ask you, Coach, where people can find you on social media, but we know how you feel on that. But if do you want to leave us with some tags or an email or something?
My Twitter is just like at my name. It's at Ben Iannachione. Again, that's how creative I am on Twitter. Oh yeah, my name. That's my Twitter name. So that's my Twitter name, at Ben Iannachione. And yeah, like every once in a while I'll post some things, but I'm not super active on there. So
because you're busy actually doing the thing with the people who you said you do those things with.
Yeah.
Which which we appreciate. So, hey,
Yeah.
I mean, on behalf of, James and I and all the listeners, really want to thank you for coming on and sharing all this knowledge. This has been awesome. This is one of those that you listen to 2, 3, 4 times and learn something new every time. Coach Ben hit on this, but we want to wrap up with this always. Every time we finish these conversations, please continue to practice gratitude. Tell the people that you love them. And we got one life to live. Let's live this life stimulated. Thanks everybody for listening to episode 43 with Coach Ben Iannachione. We'll catch y'all on the next one.